if you're going to talk about DEI, you need to actually say all three things so that you sound horrible saying that you don't believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI is for you to hire. It is a merit-based initiative. I don't know why we got this narrative saying that it has nothing to do with merit. It is absolutely hiring people and including people based on merit, but it's making sure that you have all walks of life represented.
Hello and welcome to Eric McElroy's American Exchange with me, Eric McElroy. That's how that works. My name's in the name. So welcome back to the podcast, or welcome to the podcast if it's your first time here. Very, very, very pleased to welcome back Melinda Hale this week to the podcast. She is a singer, a writer, an activist, a CNN and ABC News contributor, and the creator of Black Voices Heard, which is a brilliant project, which there are links to in the description of the pod or the YouTube video, wherever you are consuming this particular product at the moment. This is Melinda's second time on the podcast. We had an incredible conversation. We talked about her sense of what's going on. We are now 3 weeks into the Trump. Is it 3 weeks or 14 million weeks into the Trump presidency? How she feels things are going now, how the community that is not for the destruction of the American Constitution is kind of coming together and rallying. We end on a positive note about how she sees things and people stepping forward now that we are sort of seeing what Trump will do, which is exactly what he said he would do. And if you listen to her, we knew he would do. We also talked about Christian nationalism, which is something that she's an expert on, and how that's impacting both the state of the country and the presidency, and of course, Trump's attack and the administration's attack on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do those sound like bad things? Apparently, they are, according to the people who are in power and are desperate to retain it. So it's a brilliant conversation. I really enjoy talking to her. You'll enjoy listening. Please enjoy Melinda Hale. Oh, and if you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out our previous videos. You can see other conversations I've had, including my conversation with Melinda from before the election when we both still had hope, and also some comedy clips as well, because I do stand-up comedy. I'm not always just, moaning about America or talking about America. But regardless, please enjoy Melinda Hale. Well, I'm very excited to welcome back to the podcast Melinda Hale. It's great to have you back. As you know, I'm calling in from London and I'm looking across the pond and I see my home country. The golden age has begun, Melinda. I'm trying to put a positive spin on things. How's it?
It's
How
okay.
is it there? You're all the way on the other side of America as well, so even further across.
Yes, yeah, I'm in Los Angeles. How is it over here? It's interesting because it is divided in a way that is very confusing for me.
Mm,
There is completely one side of the country that is thrilled
yeah.
with everything that's happening, which makes me think maybe they don't fully know what's happening. And then there's the other side that's like, this is the end of America. So, um, there's not really an in between currently. We've been hit with a lot in less than a month, right? It hasn't even
Mm,
been a month yet
yeah.
since this new administration has taken office, and I think that that is by design to exhaust us, to cause mass hysteria. So we don't know where our attention is supposed to be and what we're supposed to be looking at and what we're supposed to be caring about because we're just being inundated with so many executive orders and so many things that Elon Musk is doing and so many things that with the confirmation hearings, and it's information overload that we all should be concerned about. Every single
Mm,
aspect, every single little piece is important and actually does affect us as a nation. So
yeah.
trying to keep up with that and trying to also inform my followers and also keep my mental health in check, it's been difficult. It's been difficult because it's been a lot at once.
Mm,
um and just seeing what I will say, the positive, this is the positive I will say. I think that more people are leaning into safe communities at this point,
mm,
of people that they know they can talk to, that feel the same. But I think the division is even deeper now,
yeah.
and I don't know where this is going to lead us, but it feels like there's two different versions of America happening at the moment.
Yeah, because I mean, I have family that are happy with what's going on,
Mm,
you sort of what you have to. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I don't. I know my where my values are and what I believe in and everything else. And I'm a very, I'm a political geek. I'm an informed person, and you have to just kind of wonder, like, what? How do you're existing in the same reality that we both
yeah.
are? And and I know that a lot of them, their information funnel is broken, in my view. All of these things, but it still makes you just. How is it that we're in the same timeline?
Well, one thing I have realized is it does boil down to news consumption and also
Mm,
what news media reports. Mainstream media has taken a downward spiral lately, but I
yeah.
mean, it just has. I think that we can all admit that, and a lot of people are actually getting their news from people like me, from different influencers in the social media space, because
Mm,
we don't have parameters on how we are allowed to present. Now, of course, that does have pros and cons. Some people have
yeah.
integrity, some people don't, right? But I think when you are only consuming one specific news outlet, which I'm sure your family, given what you just said, maybe they only watch Fox News, they're not going
Yeah.
to get the full picture. And I just recently saw that, like, someone was saying that they were somewhere and Fox News was on for an hour, and the only thing they focused on was something that the Clintons were doing. They didn't talk about any of the executive orders. They didn't talk about the fact
Uh,
that Elon Musk 19-year-olds and 25-year-olds have access to your social security. Like, they didn't talk about any of those things. And so it makes me wonder, what do they actually know is happening? And I think, again, I think it is by design, keep the people ignorant and then you can get away with whatever you want. And it's unfortunate because those are the people that voted for him, but they're also the
mm,
ones that are going to be affected the most.
yeah. And I don't want, people that I know and love and other people in general who have been misled, and some
Yeah.
of that is willful choice, but some of that is
Hmm.
not. I don't want them to be hurt, but it's like until they feel the same pain that we're seeing, I don't know if that's going to ever change, if Trump will ever burst this bubble of invincibility that he's wrapped himself with.
Correct, correct. And that's funny that you say that. I'm so astonished by how much he's been able to get away with. Like, there
Yeah.
really is this, this, like you said, it's invisible, like the shield of protection around him. And I'm like, what does he have to do to get people to realize what he's been doing? Like, I don't know where the goalpost is, but it does
Yeah.
keep moving. So it's really just interesting to see, and it's unfortunate, honestly.
If it only stopped at interesting, that would be the if that was the
That's the, that's
line
the,
that
that's
we
just
could
the
draw. Oh,
kindest I can be.
this is
It is
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, it's just the deconstruction of the congressional, constitutional
Oh
structure of
my
government
God.
we've had, but it's fine.
The
Um,
whole thing's being dismantled. And that's the
yeah,
other thing, is it's by people who were so adamant about protecting the
I
Constitution.
know. Yeah. Well, because you're wrapping
And
yourself in patriotism is the easiest way to hide things. Because
100%.
if you're questioning it, you're not being
100%.
patriotic, and
Correct.
that's something liberals have struggled with for a long time because they by default they question the status quo and they question
Hmm.
the alleged rewriting of American history to go, okay,
Yeah.
well maybe there's parts of this that haven't been recognized or talked about as much, maybe that's a good thing. Oh, you're changing, you're taking away. And I was like, no, we're just adding to the whole flavor of what
Yeah.
actually
Mm.
happened over
Yes.
the last 250 plus years.
Right.
So initially, when you were kind enough to say you'd come back and talk to me, we were going to talk about Christian nationalism, and so I want to come back
Yeah.
to that before we finish. But we'll start with
Yeah.
all this Trump shit. Um, and I think we talked about DEI last time and how that was being made to be the boogie person in all of this,
Yes.
and now it is just come straight to the forefront, like on day whatever. Well, this is coming out after it's on the day this is coming out. It's Trump's only been president for 3 weeks or 300 weeks. I'm not really sure anymore. But obviously, we had the tragic.
January was the longest year of my life.
Oh, I don't. February is supposed to be a short month.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
sure
don't
if that's
know.
going to happen.
I don't I think it'll be the first time that February feels very long.
Yeah. with the tragic plane crash that happened in DC, and
Mm,
immediately you've got the
yeah.
president of the United States blaming DEI before we know anything that's happened. And basically diversity, equity, and inclusion, which
Hmm.
is, I think, and I'm saying this as a white guy, this is just code word for basically saying it's not a white man doing it.
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing. I'm guessing other. I mean, how do you hear that? And I don't even know how to phrase the
I mean,
question. Really, it's so gross.
you are absolutely correct. Again, this goes back to the lack of education and conversation. First and foremost, people don't have an understanding of what diversity, equity, and inclusion are. And I
Mm.
saw a meme the other day that said, if you're going to talk about DEI, you need to actually say all three things so that you sound horrible saying that you don't believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because and it's true. It's like, what do you oppose
Yeah.
about it? Do you oppose diversity? Do you oppose equity? Do you oppose inclusion? And I think people are one, they are they are confusing it with affirmative action. The
Mm.
purpose of DEI, and I've taught DEI and I've done workshops. The purpose of DEI is for you to hire. It is a merit based initiative. I don't know why we got this narrative saying that it has nothing to do with merit. It is absolutely hiring people and including people based on merit, but it's making sure that you have all walks of life represented within
Yeah.
whatever work frame you're in or whatever environment you're in so that everyone has an equal opportunity, everyone is included, and that your workplace is diverse. There are enough studies and statistics to show that diversity in any environment is better for everybody. It makes
Mm.
morale better. It makes people more productive, and it also makes you a more well-rounded and empathetic person. Now, if you don't push critical thinking and you don't push empathy, then why would you? Of course, you're not going to want that. And that,
Yeah.
because that makes you smarter. And then that's what makes you start to question, and they don't want to be questioned, right? So, I don't know if you saw Wicked. I'm going to use this as an example, but one of the things they said in the movie Wicked was the best thing to bring people together is to give them a common enemy. And
Mm.
that's exactly what they've done with
Yeah.
DEI. Make it seem like it's just people of color, women, whoever, LGBTQ, taking jobs away from people that are qualified when they aren't qualified. So
Mm.
you've convinced people that they are the qualified ones, even if they're not, you've convinced them that they're the qualified ones for the situation. And just because these people are people of color or members of the LGBTQ community or have a disability, that automatically means that they didn't get the job because of merit. There's
Yeah.
no scenario in their mind where you would have gotten selected for something because of merit, because you fall under the category of a marginalized group. That I will have safe to say that that is how effective
Mm.
conservative Republican messaging is.
Yeah. Well, because they always stick on point as a group, and they don't care about the truth. So this is a really effective way to stay on message if you don't give a shit about saying
100%.
things that are true.
Right.
And I think that that's the core of where Democrats collapse every time is because
Hmm.
we they overcomplicate the message. They try and create an inclusive message, and sometimes
Hmm.
messaging doesn't work inclusively. Not in this environment. And I think
Right.
looking at, like Kamala Harris's messages, I think some things got muddied at the end. It was joy for a while, then it was a democracy message for a while, and it was other things. But also, she only had 3 months to create a message to come through and break through the noise of a massive country in a massive news environment where people don't pay attention all the time.
Correct, correct. And she was called a DEI hire despite her having been in public service for 25 years, being a
Yeah,
prosecutor, the only presidential nominee that has worked in all three branches of government. And they called her
yeah,
a DEI hire. So that's a perfect example. Look at Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's our Supreme Court justice. If you I posted this the other day. The
I
reason
saw that.
she's a
Yeah,
DEI hire, I mean, she diversified the court. She had an equitable opportunity to be a Supreme Court justice, and she was including a demographic that wasn't already on the court, but she has more qualifications than all of them combined.
that was a
And
chart that you had on your
yeah, it was
Insta.
the chart
Yeah,
that I had on my Instagram, and it showed everything that she did from where she went to law school, being a clerk, being on Harvard Law Review, serving for this judge for this, and I mean the chart just went on and on and on, and it was like triple what any of the other Supreme Court justices had to do to get to their spot. And we always say in the Black community, you have to work twice as hard to get half as
mm,
much.
yeah.
And she's proof of that.
What I mean, we knew Trump was going to do things like this. We didn't quite know he was
Yeah.
going to be so forceful about it, and now he's just being blatantly open about it. Because basically, it's just, I mean, they're so close to just saying we just need white men to do this. I mean, it's just like you can feel it, like it's just
Which I
there. I
would
mean,
rather, I honestly would rather them just say that. Just say
yeah.
it instead of like skirting
I,
around and trying to make it seem like other things. Just say you just want white people to do it.
I,
White men.
I mean, he would get away with it because he can get
He
away with
would.
anything. I mean,
He
he would.
would.
Maybe the rest of them couldn't, but what is I think even more insidious and sickening is watching all of these major corporations fall right into it and
Mm,
cancel their DEI programs and pull back on these initiatives because it basically shows you that they didn't give a shit about it in the first place. That it's just
100%.
easier to go, you know what? Oh, a little bit of pushback and maybe it'll make us look better with the president. We'll roll them all up because we just really didn't ever want to do these things.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm proud of the ones that are standing 10 toes down about it though.
Hmm.
Like Costco and Apple, they're like, no, we're keeping it. And I'm proud of them. I'm most upset about Target, but it's probably better for my bank account. Um, but yeah, it is disappointing because it was very quick. There
Hmm.
was no, let's figure this out. Let's try to reframe it, or
Yeah.
even saying, hey, we don't want to get rid of this, but we're being threatened in this way.
Hmm.
Even if they came forward and said that, I think people would be a little bit more forgiving and have some grace. But they were just like, okay, we're taking it away. And then that was that. So that was frustrating for sure.
But messaging wise, I think that tells people who again aren't paying attention to these things that intensively that if they're like, oh well, if all these companies are getting rid of it, it proves Trump right, or
Yeah,
it validates the fact that actually these initiatives were bad or were unnecessary or were cumbersome, and it gives legitimacy to the lie that it was.
correct. That is 100% correct. Yeah.
So, well, and then I guess it's good that I didn't know about Apple not giving up on that yet, but then they did give $1 million to his inauguration. So they're trying
They're
to,
very confusing. I don't get them.
uh, I mean, considering the way iPhones are made as well in China and stuff. I mean, it's hard because, I mean, basically, how can you, as a, like, you think, well, as a shopper, so you're going to, I mean, would you not go to Target now? I mean, is that like, because we can protest with our pocketbooks,
For sure, for
but,
sure.
I
For
mean,
me, my
yeah.
strategy is to continue to support the Black-owned brands that are in
Hmm.
Target because I
Okay.
don't want them to suffer from people choosing to not go. Because at least by
Sure.
doing that, if people are supporting Black-owned brands or minority-owned brands that they know are in Target, you're showing, you know what, I'm still supporting these and these are the ones matter. So if you see an uptick in sales from those, Target would realize maybe it is good business. And that's the other thing. Mark Cuban,
Mhm.
he's always saying DEI is just good for business. So it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense why you would take these things away because you're, from a business perspective, which is so odd because a lot of them are about money. If you
Mm.
look at it, if you include DEI, you're expanding your consumer base also.
Yeah.
So to take those initiatives away and saying, oh, we're not going to be putting forth Target specifically, because they had whole programs of bringing in minority creators and designers from clothing to home goods to food, whatever the case may be. But now you're saying you're not going to be putting money forth to look for the best of the best within those categories. You're going to get rid of an entire consumer base. And
Mm.
that's just not smart. So for me though, as long as some of the black owned brands that I support are still at Target, I will go to Target and just support those brands.
And I guess so. What are because it felt like so Trump won. We all
Hmm.
felt quite bad, and it felt like there wasn't the same street protests and everything else that there was. I guess partly because he's riding on a wave of some sort of electoral legitimacy. Use that term loosely since he's a felon and and was arguably not
All the
eligible to swear an
things,
oath to the Constitution. All of those things. Setting aside
all
that, we're
those
not
things.
Republicans,
Yeah,
so we're not going to deny that the election took place and that he was elected. That's fine.
correct. Correct.
It felt deflated but it feels like now that he's in power and it's starting to happen that what are the positive things that you see happening that are where the quote unquote resistance is starting to take place.
So I do think some Dems are finally stepping up. I think, unfortunately, there was a little bit of defeat, which I mean, how could you not
Yeah.
have that, right? But the Democrats' Instagram page is now starting to post daily things that Democrats have been doing, which I think is wonderful because I think
Hmm.
that that's what we need to see what your actionable items are that you're doing on a daily basis. So if people want to follow just Instagram at Democrats, you can see what they are doing in terms of resistance, in terms of what they're filing, where they're protesting, who they're talking to, who they're calling, who they're subpoenaing, whatever the case may be. And it's really good to see that they're actually doing something because I would say that first week I was like, um, where are y'all? Like,
Yeah.
where are you guys? Like, how are you
Yeah.
just gonna let this happen? So, it's good to know that they are trying to come up with a plan. I think that unfortunately, they, I get you want to stay with your morals and stay with your convictions, but I do think that it's time to not play as nice as they have been
Hmm.
because, like I
Well,
said, Republicans are very effective at what they do.
and this is the energy, and we're seeing this here in the UK because we have a liberal government here at the moment with the Labour Party, but they're being very cautious conservative with what they're doing.
Mm,
And they are creating a space for a right-wing party called Reform, which is acting like Trump does. It's
mm,
led by Nigel Farage, who I know has had a bit of an impact in the US. But I can see the Democrats here being very cautious, very careful, staying in their lane, and and the Progressive Party, which doesn't care about following rules or traditions, is eating
hmm.
away at them in the polls. And I think Democrats have to learn that part of what Trump and Republicans have done is they are pushing the boundaries of power,
Hmm.
obviously in illegal ways, but it feels like that's what we're going to have to do to recapture a narrative. The
Yeah,
Democrats can't play nice anymore.
yeah. Agreed. They can't. They can't. And they need to have an effective strategy as well. And they also need to listen to their base a little bit more, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think I think that they are operating from an old playbook that worked in the past, and haven't updated the way they move through this current space, to be honest. I think there is new leadership that is rising forth, like Jasmine Crockett, like AOC. Like, I
Mm,
think that they're going to be the ones that really are going to change how the Dems operate,
yeah.
and specifically with this resistance. So I think letting them lead is probably one of the smarter things that they can do.
Yeah, I think we have to be because I'm a more kind of probably centristy type people. Like I was never on the Bernie train, and I was
Hmm.
like, "It's too much. It's too
It's
far."
too
Like
much. Yeah.
there's a
Agreed.
middle ground. But I think that the Republicans don't care about a middle ground. They've gone too much and too far, and they're trying to create a Handmaid's Tale sort of esque America,
Yeah.
and they won on that
Yeah.
agenda.
Republicans just
So
care about winning. They just care about
yeah,
winning and they figure out how to do it very well.
yeah. Well, speaking about moderation a little bit, because I should have started with this. I'm sorry, but because I know you're in Los Angeles and the fires were. I hope your home was okay, or I don't know what.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We were safe. Bad air quality, but we're fine. Yeah.
I just saw an article. I don't know where it was, but that Gavin Newsom is playing nice with Trump to try and get money for California. I'm guessing. So
Yeah.
here's somebody who was really being a fighter, really in the mix, apparently, but now has he gone to kiss the ring, or what's Gavin up to?
I don't think he's going to kiss the ring. I think that I think Gavin is a politician.
Yeah.
I really like Gavin Newsom. I do. I think
You're the
he's a
first person
politician.
I've ever heard say that.
I mean, that you liked him, that I liked him,
But
or that he's a
yeah,
politician.
everyone that I've ever talked to I don't have a lot of Californians on the podcast, but the people that have talked about him have always been like, ugh,
Oh,
not
I love Gavin Newsom. I
okay.
absolutely love him. Um, I that's funny because I haven't talked to anybody that doesn't like him. So
Okay.
that's very interesting. Yeah, I really do like him. I think he's a politician though. And I
Yeah.
think that he will do what he needs to do. I personally believe. I think he will do what he needs to do in a way that doesn't compromise what he believes in, but will make sure that he gets what he needs for his constituents.
Hmm.
So I don't think that means kissing the ring of Trump, but I do think it means being civil.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he's going to cuss the guy out to his face, but I think that he will, you know, I think he will have civil discourse for sure. That's what I think.
The problem is Trump humiliates anyone that tries to even play normally with him. He
Yeah,
like
but there's ways to humiliate Trump. People just need to do it.
that's true.
People just need to do it.
Um, yeah, I think it's just it's well they've had the same here with Keir Starmer, the prime minister. He's apparently had
Mm,
positive because again he's liberal, and in the past he's said bad things about Donald Trump. But everyone has said bad things about Donald Trump.
everyone,
JD.
everyone.
It's like every time I'm on a media thing here, and they're like, well, can you believe that so and so said? I'm like, JD Vance called him America's Hitler, and
Yeah,
he's
and
his
now he's
vice
his vice.
president.
Yeah,
So
it's
I mean, we can only.
proximity to power is really a hell of a drug for some people, and I think that there are certain people that will give in if they are guaranteed a level of power and fame and success and money. Honestly,
Mm,
unfortunately, um, I think you see that more on the right. I think you see that more with the conservative base that matters more to them.
yeah, I mean, money and power is nice, but
Yeah,
there's a
but which is
cost.
odd though because
There's a cost.
they're tethered to a Christian faith, and those aren't supposed to be things that you care about when you claim to be a
Exactly.
Christian.
Which is a good that's a good point to talk about this. So how much, because I know you've looked a lot at this Christian nationalist movement. I mean, what is that for somebody who hasn't looked at it?
It's terrifying, is what it is. Um, so, just to give my background, I've been a Christian my whole life. I grew up in progressive Christian church. I went to a conservative evangelical Christian college, and
Hmm.
I came out of that college even more liberal than I was going in because I was like, these people are crazy. Um, Christian nationalism really is just being devoid of separation of church and state, and
Hmm.
it's imposing Christian beliefs, I put that in quotes, onto the entire society and public, and trying to make the United States a Christian nation, which it is
Right.
not, and it's not supposed to be, and that's not what the founding fathers said. I mean, the
Hmm.
founding fathers had a lot of issues as well, but it was never meant to be a Christian nation.
Yeah.
So when we joke about Handmaid's Tale, it's actually not funny because it's pretty in line with how Christian nationalism will view everybody. Women are meant to be at home with the kids.
Hmm.
White men, are straight white men, are in charge of everything. There is, law and order, they say, even though look who your president is. Um, and it's really, I mean, I would say it's pretty much the Old Testament of the Bible they're trying to follow, which I don't even know if a lot of them have read it, but it's really, like I said, just imposing certain beliefs onto the entire society, having the Ten Commandments in public
Hmm.
schools that has
Yeah.
been passed. He just announced yesterday they're having a new task force, which I laugh about because it's ridiculous, but to combat anti-Christian bias, which is like, Christians aren't being persecuted in the States. We just want you to leave people alone. Like, y'all are the ones that are bothering everybody and trying to
Hmm.
force your beliefs onto people. People just want you to let them live their lives. And then you want to turn around and say that you're the ones that are persecuted and you're the ones that are, getting discriminated against, which is not true. They think that, oh, I got in trouble because I denied this gay couple making them a wedding cake. It's like,
Hmm.
the cake, and you're really gonna
Yeah.
just like claim it's that type of stuff, right? So to protect them from those things. So it's really terrifying because it leans into more power and control, and it really has nothing to do with the teachings of Christ. There's
Yeah.
a documentary, I don't know if you've seen it, called Bad Faith.
Hmm.
It's all about Christian nationalism, and I highly recommend people watching it to understand how we got here, how the movement started, and where it's probably going to end up if we don't have an active form of resistance. But it
Yeah.
really just shows how, and this is the empathy in me, even though I'm trying, it's hard to have empathy for this, but this is the empathy in me. It really shows how people have looked for a sense of belonging in some way,
Hmm.
and this movement will accept anybody as long as you go along with what they say. They will welcome you with open arms as long as you go along with what they say, which is why you see even a lot of marginalized groups be a part of this because they feel like they don't know where they fit on the Dem side because there's so many different groups on the liberal
Right.
side, right? There's so many different identities, so many different places to be. It's like, I don't know where I fit in. Oh, well, these people just all think this one thing. This is a little easier and they'll accept
Mm,
me for who I am. So I'm just going to go over here and I'll adjust my ideology as long as I fit in, which I get it. Everybody wants to have a sense of belonging. Everybody wants to have a place that they can call home, so to speak, when it comes to a group. But again, it's dangerous because they actively are against people and not for anything that helps people. And I think that that is the biggest difference between Christianity and Christian nationalism. Christianity is
mm,
all about who you're for, who you can help, who you can show up
yeah.
for. The least of these, as Jesus talked about. Christian nationalism is all about who you are against, who you think doesn't deserve to have a space in this world, taking people's identities away, even though it doesn't affect you whatsoever. So that was kind of the long form version, but there's
Mm.
so much more. But that's kind of in a nutshell what Christian nationalism is.
So is it a white nationalist movement or is it expanded beyond that?
It, yes, but that doesn't mean that other people aren't a part of it. And I think,
Mm,
when you say white nationalists and white supremacy and all of that, people think you can't be a person of color and be a part of that. White supremacy is just you think that white people are superior. There are plenty of
mm,
people of color that actually think that, right? So you're going
mm.
to join this movement because you think, hey, if I can't beat them, join them. So, um, and it's like, nah, that's probably not the people you want to join. But so yeah, it definitely was started by white nationalists and white
Mm.
supremacists, and more people have joined along because, like I said, it's a sense of belonging. It's a really
Right.
warped way of thinking, but that's yeah, yeah,
But I mean, I don't know, if there's a way that I can say this is a white guy that doesn't sound awful, but I mean, I see it here with people who've moved into a conservative space that aren't traditionally in a conservative space in the media. I have
yeah.
friends that have done this, but I can see it with, some people of color that have done this, and then they use that person, I think, to point at them and say, "See, we're not racist because we've got this
Mm,
one black guy that's with us."
100%.
Whether it's
Hmm.
like, if I'm gonna like Senator Tim Scott, perhaps, for
Yes,
example, is
yes,
someone
yes.
who I might be so bold as to put forward as an example
No,
of that.
absolutely,
You
absolutely.
know,
And what I always say with those people is, why have you never seen any of them uplifted to higher positions within this
mm,
movement?
yeah.
They
Well,
only have paraded Tim Scott out to tell America that America wasn't racist. That's
yeah,
what his
he's not.
speech was at the
Where,
RNC.
where did he end up in President Trump's cabinet?
He nowhere. Not a
Yeah,
single black person. The only person of color I think is Cash, who may not even get confirmed, but Vivek is already out.
yeah,
So it's legitimately all white people.
yeah.
It's all white people. And it's very interesting to me because even when we go back to DEI, so many of them are not qualified to do anything,
Yeah.
right? Your qualification for them was that they were white. And
Mm,
I always ask the questions like, do you really think in the history of this country and in the world that white people, white men specifically, didn't just hire other white men because they were white men? They're
mm.
literally hiring them or including them or asking them to do because of their race and gender, which is the exact thing that you all claim to have an issue with.
But yeah, I think pointing out stuff like that, it's an overwhelming sense of logic that people can't compute or process, and and there is, I mean, there is a human nature to be drawn towards people that are like you, partly because of where you grow up, perhaps, or your life and your culture and all those things. But at the same time, that's why you need DEI to step outside of your own fucking knowledge
Correct.
base. It's that
Yes,
simple, especially in a
correct.
country that is meant to be the quote unquote melting pot.
100%. I
All of
was
the
just
things that America is supposed to stand for. But
did you ever watch Schoolhouse Rock growing
of
up?
course, yeah.
Yeah, I just looked at the song The Great American Melting Pot and I was like, they don't believe any of this anymore. They don't. It's like
Yeah.
the melting pot is a problem now. And I'm so disappointed and I'm not surprised at the same time, but I am disappointed because I feel like the message that America has consistently given it was just false. It's like
Mm,
nobody believes it, or you're changing the message maybe, but the whole point of America, as you said, was to be this melting pot, was to
yeah.
welcome people from all walks of life. We know that immigrants do make this country great. We know that diversity makes everything great. Again, it expands your way of thinking. It makes you more empathetic. So I just don't know the benefit beyond them only wanting to preserve whiteness as an entity. And I don't see the benefit. I don't, and I never will. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's beyond my capacity to understand.
Well, and I think when I see people like Trump and what Musk is doing, to me, that's, I mean, there's an element of whether it's true believer in the racial supremacy or all that, or it's just greed. It's just, I think for Trump, it's probably a mix of both. A
Yeah,
little bit,
yeah,
a dash of racism, a lot of greed, and then the mix of every, and then an addiction to power and other things as
yes,
well.
and ego and all of that. Yeah,
All of those awful, awful things. I mean, the thing that frustrates me when I hear people talk about, because we're hearing this, because in the UK, one of the largest migrant groups that we have in the UK, or people that come through, of course, are from Muslim backgrounds, and a lot of people, from South Asia and that kind of thing. And the right here constantly bangs on about the fact that, well, the Muslim culture don't have our values, but movements like this white Christians, that's not American values either, or I think British
right.
values either, because their treatment of women is exactly the same as what conservative Islamic treatment of women is. It's
Mm,
it's not any
mm,
different. You know,
hmm.
you know, when you can marry off your daughter in Idaho, I believe still at the age of 13.
Yes, that is
How
correct.
is that raising up women? You know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
oh no, we'll keep women away from trans women away from sports, but you could still get married at 13.
Yeah,
But
and the trans issue is another thing that really, first of all, none of you have ever met a trans person because the percentage of trans people in America is so minuscule. Second of all, I think that out of the 500,000 NCAA athletes, there are 10 trans athletes.
yeah.
10. So we're causing all of this hoopla over 10 people that none of your children are probably ever going to be affected by. And
Mm.
also, you never cared about women's sports to begin with. So why is this like people do not support women's sports. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's just the truth. But now it's an issue, right? And I think again, back to Republican effective messaging, they are
Mm.
very good at making something an issue that isn't an issue.
Yeah. Well, and
They're
that, but
very good at it.
I think that there was an effectiveness behind that commercial, the they them commercial that ran
Yes.
against Kamala Harris, where she said she was supporting trans people getting surgeries in prison, which was just the law at the time, and it was manipulated, of course. But that messaging that's so effective, and now the narrative is that cost her the election. That's one of those other and I don't, I mean. But it was because the messaging was effective. It's not because the reality of that is a topic that I think is affecting the daily lives of most Americans and most women
Yeah.
who are Americans. But
Yeah.
um, we're running out of time. I really, it's great talking to you. I'm
You
trying to think.
too.
Uh, I guess what is the thing that is making you feel good right now? If we can end on a positive note. There's a positive message, is a bubble from all the way from California to London. I mean, are there, yeah, it's hard because it is a daily. I mean, I had one of my good friends who lives in Ohio, who is not a Republican. She messaged me last night, and I believe the message was, this is bananas. Just like, I mean, it's just, I'm getting these messages of like, what is happening? So what is the joyful message do you have one? Do you see some positivity?
No, I do. I mean, again, it's rooted in turmoil, but I think the positive is that which I wish that they did it before the election, but the
Mm,
positive is seeing more people now be involved and be
yeah.
aware and reading. oh the shocker on that one. Reading because and I don't ever want to tell anybody it's too late, right?
Mm,
I do wish that people got more involved and read and really listened because I've heard from a lot of people, I didn't know he was going to do all of this. And it's like we were telling you, right?
yeah.
So I think the positive, hopefully moving forward, is that people aren't going to be as ignorant as they were before. Because as you can see, ignorant is not bliss. Because when you
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen and then all this stuff happens and you're screwed. So I think that that is a positive that people are getting more involved in politics because everyone always says, like, oh, I don't want to get political. Everything's political.
Mm, yeah.
Politics affect you. You have to understand. Even and I'm not saying that people need to go to the lengths that I do with activism and advocacy and constantly posting and educating and all that. But being aware is the
Mm,
first step. And I think that that's important. So I hope, and I have been seeing more people ask questions, more people reposting things in their stories, having conversations. I think that that definitely is a plus, that it is pulling people out of their bubbles and out of their spaces to get more engaged and to figure out what they can do to survive over these
mm,
next 4 years. And then also to make sure that this never happens again.
yeah. Well, that's good because it is about education and
Yes.
engagement. And that's why one of the things they want to do is shut down the Department of Education, for example,
100%.
because they know
100%.
that when people are educated, they don't vote for shit. I guess is the technical term for whatever is going on now.
Precisely.
But
Precisely.
well, thank you for, talking to me again. Thank you for what you posting, and we'll put all of your socials, of course, in
Great.
the description so people can find you because they're informative and interesting and passionate, and they're brilliant to see. So thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Well, there we go. Thank you so much to Melinda for taking the time to come back on the podcast. Thank you in advance for Mark, the producer, for putting everything together. Um, I really like talking to her. It's a fascinating perspective. Getting a sense of what's happening on the ground, I think is going to be a big part of what we do here on the podcast because I'm so far away, but this is happening to a place that I care about and love about, and it impacts my family. And as we've seen from the attacks on USAID, um, affecting the rest of the world as well, which is something I hadn't even realized the impact of. And we're going to try and explore that in future episodes. So thank you very much for listening. Please, of course, give feedback to the pod wherever you're listening to it on the various platforms that are there. On YouTube, of course, we're trying to grow because everything's visual these days. Subscribe and like the videos, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again to Melinda. Thanks very much. Bye bye.